الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. If I'm not mistaken, this is our 18th episode, and today we will discuss, with the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal, the Eid prayer. What is meant by Eid? Linguistically, Eid is derived from something that reoccurs. عاد يعود, meaning that it comes back, it returns, and Eid is something that is describing a reoccurring either event that is time bound or a location that is often visited. The Prophet said عليه الصلاة والسلام, لا تتخذوا قبري عيدا, do not make my grave a Eid, meaning that you often go and visit my grave. Do not do that. Why? Because if you do that, Shaitan, the devil, Satan, with time will have a negative impact on people's perception, so that he would convince them that visiting the grave of the Prophet ﷺ makes you attain benefits and blessings from Allah or from the Prophet. And people would slowly but surely fall into shirk. And if you go to Medina, you would see that clearly in front of your eyes. Despite the protection and the guards and the scholars advising not to do this, you will find people wiping the walls of the room, of the chamber, wiping their faces with it, attaching their bodies to it, supplicating, while we gives their back to the Qibla and face the chamber and supplicate and make dua. And all of this is totally haram, and it leads to shirk. And it is shirk if a person asks the Prophet ﷺ directly. This would be shirk. So this Eid is referring to a location. In Sahih Muslim, a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I vowed to slaughter a camel in Buwana. So the Prophet said to him, is there any idol that the idol worshippers worship? The man said, no. So the Prophet said, is there any Eid in it for the mushriks? The man said, no. The Prophet said, fulfill your vow. As for the time-bound Eid, this is what the vast majority of Muslims understand when we mention the term Eid. So it is related to time. And the clearest example is when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina. He found that the people, the natives of Medina, used to play during a day of the year that they celebrate and feast. So when he asked them and they told him, he denied and prohibited them to celebrate such days and said to them, Allah has substituted you with two better days, Eid al-Adha wa Eid al-Fitr. So Muslims have two Eids in the year that they celebrate, which is Eid al-Adha, the Eid that is on the 10th of the last month of the lunar or Islamic calendar, the month of Dhul Hijjah. And this Eid coincides with the pilgrimage and the pilgrimage of Hajj, such as throwing the pebbles of Al-Aqaba, slaughtering their sacrifice, shaving their heads, and offering Tawaf al-Ifada. For us who do not or are not going for Hajj, we simply commemorate that day with slaughtering a sacrifice and offering Eid prayer. As for Eid al-Fitr, this comes at the end of the month of Ramadan. So the first day that follows the month of Ramadan is the day of Eid al-Fitr. And both days are prohibited for a Muslim to fast them. Totally. No matter what. It's totally prohibited to be fasted by Muslims, even if it's for an expiation, making up for days missed in Ramadan, a vow, whatever. And if they fast it, it's not accepted. So this is what the two Eids in Islam signify, which means that we cannot have other celebrations, Eid, that reoccur every single year on the same time. So we can't have definitely celebrations or Eids that the disbelievers celebrate, such as Christmas, New Year's, Halloween, Easter, whatever. And likewise, we cannot celebrate man-made the Day of Independence, the National Day, the anniversary of a married couple, birthdays, and so forth. When we come to Eid prayers, the scholars have differed on the ruling of it. The majority of scholars say that it is a highly recommended sunnah. And this is what Hanbali school of thought went to say, that it is a communal duty or obligation. So it's a collective duty, which means that if some people do it, then it is not mandatory for the rest to do it. But if not a single soul does it, then it becomes sinful for all of them. The Hanafi school of thought say that it is an obligation upon every individual, and they include women, men, women who are in their menses, etc. And this opinion of its being obligation is also the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh bin Baz, Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, and others. They say it's an obligation upon every individual simply because the Prophet ﷺ instructed the Muslims to attend it, and he specified women and girls, even those who are in their menses. So we know that women in their menses do not pray, so why attend? The Prophet said ﷺ, so that they would be part of the congregation and witness the supplication for goodness. When the Imam makes dua, they will take part of it, but they should avoid the prayer area, so because they do not pray. Conditions. So the textbook here stated a number of conditions. One of them is it should be offered on time. So we know that the time of Eid prayer is the same as Duha prayer. And the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was to pray it after the sun rises by 10 to 15 minutes, and we will come to discuss this later on, inshallah. One of the conditions is that the required number, if you recall, the required number for Jumu'ah is three people, one imam and two in the congregation. The other condition is that it should be performed by residents. So if I'm traveling to another country with a group of believers and we're travelers and it's Eid time, we should not offer Eid prayer. Why? Because we're travelers. But if there were residents offering it and we join them, this is okay. There's no problem in that. As for the place for offering it, it is sunnah, open space and away from residential buildings. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ did all of his life. And the reason, as some scholars suggested, is that the majority of people in the vicinity, in the city, in the town, would see how many Muslims are offering it. So it's a beautiful sight for the believers to feel strong and many. And it's a horrifying sight for others who intend ill to the Muslims when they see that they are collaborating and they are joining hands in congregation. It's a beautiful sight that the enemies would think twice before thinking of attacking the Muslims who are expressing their solidarity through this beautiful ritual. Now, some would say, well, actually this is wrong, because the vast majority of schools of thought, the vast majority of the Muslims, scholars in the schools of thought, say that it should be prayed in the musalla. Why? They said because the Prophet ﷺ told us that praying in his masjid is 1,000 times better than praying elsewhere, of course, other than the Masjid of Mecca. Yet he never prayed Eid prayer in it, which indicates that Eid prayer place is not in the masjid, and that it is supposed to be in an open area, in an open space away from the buildings, as he used to do, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he would never had skipped great reward such as praying in his masjid unless it was something that was mandatory to offer elsewhere. And this is what called a group of scholars, a lot of scholars, to condemn praying Eid prayers in the masjid and consider it to be an innovation, simply because you cannot execute the order of the Prophet ﷺ to have girls and women in menses attending it. How would they be able to enter the masjid? This is not possible. So, especially in Eid, subhanallah, in the subcontinent, it shows you how ignorant the people there who insist on blocking women from attending salat in the masjid. The scholars definitely do not agree, do not approve of such blockage. But it is the masses, it's the hooligans running these masjids who prevent women from attending the prayer going clearly against the command and the direction of the directive of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, do not prevent women from attending prayers in the masjid. But anyhow, may Allah make it easy for the Muslims there. What about the time? So the textbook time as duha prayer. And we've stated that duha prayer time begins when the sun rises by 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes. However, there's a catch here. And that is that there is a difference, a slight difference, between the time of Fitr Eid and Eid al-Adha. The prayers of Eid. Why? In Eid al-Adha, the sunnah is soon as possible. While in Eid al-Fitr, the sunnah is to postpone it a bit as much as possible without burdening the worshippers. Why is there such a segregation? Well, scholars say that in Eid al-Adha, what is the first thing people would do? The answer is offer their sacrifice. So this takes a long time, the process of sacrificing, of slaughtering and preparing your sacrifice. Therefore, it is best to let the people go and attend their affairs. So the sooner you pray the Eid prayer of Al-Adha, the better it is. And this is a sunnah. As for Eid al-Fitr, it's a different story. Because at the end of Ramadan, there is a ritual known as Zakatul Fitr, where you have to give one sa', equivalent to 2.125 kilograms of rice or dates or whatever, depending on the size and the type you are giving as zakat. And you give it before the Eid prayer. So the time is very limited. And some extend the time to a day or two before Ramadan ends. But the sunnah is you give it out at night time before the Eid. So today is the 29th, the crescent. So we know that tomorrow is Eid. Now is the time to give your Zakatul Fitr out. And you have like 10, maybe 8 hours only to give it out, because the deadline is Salatul Eid. And so many people give it out at the last moment. So the sunnah is to postpone, to delay a bit Salatul Eid of Al-Fitr, so that people can have a chance to give the zakat out. And the format is the same in both prayers. They're identical. So the Eid prayer consists of takbir that are not similar to any other prayer except the prayer of istisqa, which is the prayer for rain. So how is it done? It's done like so. The Imam goes, Allahu Akbar. This is one, which is Takbiratul Ihram, which is a pillar. And scholars say that the sunnah is after this takbir, you say Subhanakallah Muhammadik Tabarak Asmuk Ta'ala Jadduk wa la ilaha ghayr A'udhu Billahi As-Sami' Al-Alim Min Ash-Shaytan Rajim Bismillahir Rahim, or just the dua of Istiftah, and then you offer 7 times takbir. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and the congregation are following you. So you do this once for Takbiratul Ihram and 7 times afterwards. And then you say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. You recite the Fatiha. And after the Fatiha, you recite another surah, which is usually Surah Al-A'la or Surah Qaf. So it is either Surah 87 or Surah 50. And this is the second rak'ah. To stand up, you say Allahu Akbar. Okay, you stood up. From sujood, you stood up. You said Allahu Akbar, and you did not raise your hands, because from the second sujood of the first rak'ah to the second standing position, we don't raise our hands. So we just say Allahu Akbar. Afterwards, I say 5 times Allahu Akbar, 5 times. Then I say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I read the Fatiha, and then I read Surah Al-Ghashiyah, Al-Qamar. So chapter 88 or chapter 54. Both are sunnah, as the Prophet used to do it, alayhi as-salatu was-salam. So Sheikh, you just described the prayer, but what about the khutbah? Why didn't you mention it as usual? The reason is Eid prayer is unlike the Jumu'ah. The Jumu'ah prayer, we have 2 sermons, 2 khutbah preceding the prayer, the khutbah. And Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, may Allah be pleased with him, the great companion of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So I think he's Al-Hakam ibn Hisham, who once started the khutbah before the salat in Eid, and he pulled him from his garment, and he said, don't do that. And he said, well, I've noticed that the people after salah, they would leave, so I wanted them to hear the khutbah. He said, this is not the way the Prophet did it, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he said to him that, well, this is something you don't know of. He said, yes, I do. I witnessed the Prophet ﷺ, he used to begin with the prayer and then follow that up with the sermon. So this is the sunnah that must be followed, and people must not go against it. Now, is it 1 khutbah or 2 khutbahs? What do you mean? Is it like Friday, 2 khutbahs with sitting down in between? It is composed of only a single khutbah. Remember that the Prophet ﷺ did not have a mimbar to sit on. So it was never reported that he sat between the 2 sermons, which indicates that he gave only 1 single khutbah. And this is the most authentic opinion of the scholars. So what happens if, and this happens a lot, Sheikh, we get there late, especially those who go with their kids and wives, and by the time they are ready and in the car, by the time they go, it's already over. What to do? Well, scholars say that if you reach there after the prayer is over, but the Imam giving the khutbah, you can make the prayer, and there's no problem in that. What about if I totally missed it? Like I woke up at 8 o'clock after the whole thing was over. Well, the vast majority of scholars say that it can be made up. So there's no problem in collecting all of your family members who did not pray and make a congregation and pray 2 rak'ahs like that. This is the majority of scholars. However, the Hanafi school of thought, Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen, Sheikh al-Islam bin Taymiyyah, say that this is not permissible. Eid prayer was made initially for a congregational prayer with a set of conditions done at a special or a specific place at a specific time. It cannot be made up, and this seems to be the most authentic opinion of scholars. What is recommended in Eid prayers? First of all, that it is to be organized at an open area, and we said that this is not recommended, this is mandatory. So praying it in the masjid is not permissible. And among the things that are recommended is that this open space is outside the skirts of Medina, of the town itself, not within the village borders. But again, this is not something that is authentic. So any open space, yes, as far as you can get from the buildings is a good thing, but nowadays it might be a little bit difficult. So this is not a must. We mentioned the point that Eid al-Adha being early and Eid al-Fitr being a bit delayed and late, and the reason behind that. Part of the sunnahs that a lot of the Muslims may that this is new for them is that in Eid al-Fitr, remember that this is the first day we do not fast after 29 or 30 days of Ramadan. So as an indication that we're not fasting at all, sunnah before you leave home to the Eid prayer is to eat dates, 3 or 5 dates. This is the sunnah. Why? So that no one would think that you're fasting, even if you don't feel like eating. You eat it because it's a sunnah. It's an indication, it's a sign that today is not a day of fasting. As for Eid al-Adha, the sunnah for you is not to eat anything until you slaughter your sheep and eat from its liver or from its meat, because this is what the Prophet used to do, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now this is easy to practice after Eid prayer. So in my case, what I do, I give the khutbah, I offer and the prayer, of course, greet the people, take an hour, and go to a special butcher's shop, and I already have designated my sacrifice. So the man immediately brings it, slaughters it, skins it, and gives me the meat. I immediately go home. The missus cooks some of the liver, and we take it. That's following the sunnah. Afterwards, you can have your breakfast as usual without any problem. But if you are slaughtering after Dhuhr prayer, or the following day, or the third day, this is inapplicable. You cannot do that. So therefore, this is a recommended sunnah for those who will slaughter immediately after the Eid prayer. Among the sunnah of Eid prayers is that you walk to the place of prayer, because the Prophet ﷺ did not take a ride. He used to walk. After Fajr prayer, he walked all the way to the open area, to the musalla, we call it in Arabic. And this is sunnah. It gives you time to reflect, to do your tasbih, to contemplate. Walking is a beautiful thing that is part of Islam. The more you make steps to the masjid, the higher your level in Jannah would be. The greater good deeds will be registered and bad deeds would be erased. Why? I can ride. Yes, but walking is healthier. Walking is giving you a chance to greet people, to give salam to people, to notice things that you cannot notice while driving, and it gives you time to contemplate, to think. So it's a very good thing to do, and unfortunately, most of our illnesses, I tell you about myself, the masjid is like few hundred meters away, yet we ride to it. The grocery shop is 150 meters away, we ride to it. And this style of laziness is the cause of most of our diseases: diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol levels, stress, you name it, it's there. So Islam brings us the solution directly or indirectly. Among the sunnahs, the textbook mentions to take a bath before the prayer. This is not a confirmed sunnah, meaning that it is not backed up by a hadith, and hence we cannot say it's sunnah. We would say that it is good, it's recommended, it's part of looking your best, but we cannot confirm that this is a sunnah. Also, wearing the perfume, this falls under part of wearing your best. Putting on fine appearance and wearing some of the one's best clothes, this is a confirmed sunnah, as the Prophet ﷺ used to do that for sure. Now, having said that, it is essential to note that a man's zina, a man's beauty, is in what is smelt and not what is applied with color, while the woman's beauty is with what is applied and not by what it is smelt. What does this mean? It means that it is not permissible for a woman to wear perfumes before going out of her home where men can find her scent, whether she's going to the masjid or she's going to a mall or she's going to visit someone. If she passes by non-mahrams, or if a non-mahram finds her perfume, a sin, and a major sin. So when a woman goes to Eid, and we see this so often, she should conceal her beauty. She's not like men who expose their finest clothes because this is what the Prophet ordered them. Women must conceal, not wear at her, or wear perfumes, or wear flashy dresses. All of this can be and is encouraged to be done in the society of segregated meetings with only women or with mahrams. But to go out in full uniform like this, exposing her beauty and luring the servants of Allah Azza wa Jal on a great day of ibadah, this is totally unacceptable. Number 6, it is recommended to give a comprehensive speech outlining the main principles of the Islamic faith. So, like most speeches, it should be concise and it should be informative. But you have to bear in mind that this is done twice a year, unlike Friday speeches that are done every single week. So the topics may need to be a bit more international, may need to be more generic and comprehensive, rather than speaking about the etiquettes of attending Friday prayer. This can be done on a Friday. But Eid, where rich and poor, old and young, men and women, influential and laymen, people attend, you need to. Number 7, to glorify Allah and His oneness many times. And this is mentioned in the books of fiqh, but we don't have anything to back this up. So it's so many times during the khutbah of the of the Eid, you would hear the Imam saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah alladhi la ilaha illahu, and he goes for 2-3 minutes and he says Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and he repeats it throughout the khutbah. But this is not part of the sunnah, and one may do it if he wishes, but not on regular basis as if it's something that is given. Number 8, it is part of the sunnah, and this is a beautiful sunnah that many Muslims have neglected, is to change the route. So if I go from one place to the musalla through a specific route, when I go back home, I should change the route so that I do not use the same route I came with. Why is that? Scholars say this is so that the people who are not attending the Eid, the enemies of Islam, for example, or the normal folks who are non-Muslims, when they see faces different than the faces they saw in the beginning of the day, they get the impression that there are so many Muslims. And this is known in Arabic as takthirus sawad. If I go and attend a lecture of a deviant, percent of those attending are deviant like him. When I go there, even if I have a legitimate reason, being with them gives them momentum, gives them size. So Islam tells me don't go there. Even if you have a legitimate reason, don't give them momentum. Don't give them credibility by being with them. And likewise, when you change your route, those who saw the Muslims going in the early morning to the Salat, and then they're seeing them coming back, they're different people, different faces, different vehicles. The Muslim who went out, he greets others as well. Then we have the Janazah prayer, and I think we will stop here and attend your questions, inshallah. So the questions. The first question is from Band C. And let me see if it is the same here. Yes. So the first question is, if I get 2 rak'ah of salah and rather or after salam, the imam makes sujood of forgetfulness, do I have to do the same upon completing my salat? Okay. When you are with the imam from the beginning, the imam makes a mistake. I didn't make a mistake. The imam offers salam before offering taslim. Let me rephrase that. The imam offers sujood as-sahw twice before offering taslim. I'm obliged to do it. The imam offers 2 prostrations of sahw after salam. I'm also obliged to do it. Why? Because I was with him from the very beginning. Scenario 1 is over. Scenario 2, I prayed with him 2 rak'ahs, missing 2. Just before the salam, he offered 2 prostrations of sahw. Should I perform it with him? Of course, he's your imam. So I say Allahu Akbar, I perform it with him. He gives salam, I stand up to finish my third and my fourth rak'ah. Should I offer sujood al-sahw again? The answer is, it depends. On what? The mistake that the imam had done. Were you with him at the time or you joined him afterwards? So one would say, well, actually, the imam made a mistake, had witnessed it. This means that you, after finishing your third and fourth rak'ah, then you have to offer the sujood al-sahw before salam, like your imam did, and then offer salam. Say, okay, Sheikh, don't mind me asking, but why? I already offered two sujood al-sahw with the imam. True, that's correct. But everybody knows that sujood al-sahw cannot be done in the middle of the salat. It must be done at the end of the salat. So therefore, you have to offer it also at the end of your salat because you witnessed the imam's mistake. So you have to follow your imam by offering it before your actual and real salam. Makes sense. What about if the imam offered the prostration of sahu after the salam? Well, after the imam says assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, your role in following him is over. You have to stand up for the third rak'ah. Even if he prostrates, it's none of my business, I'm out. So you finish your third rak'ah, fourth rak'ah, offer your tashahhud, offer your salam. And then we ask you, did you witness the sahu, the mistake that the imam did? If you said, yes, I was there, then you offer two prostrations after the salam and a salam. But if you said, no, the mistake that the imam added was in the first or in the second rak'ah, which I did not attend, in this case, you do not offer any prostration of forgetfulness because you did not attend the mistake. Confusing? Watch it again and inshallah you'll understand it. Number 2, Rayyan says, I've read somewhere that it is better to pay off debts than going for Hajj. How about if someone has borrowed money from a bank? He knows it is a sin and trying to get rid of it, but it might take time. Is that type of person excused for delaying his Hajj? The answer is yes. How bad is it to have debt? Well, listen to this hadith. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, all except the debt. All of the sins of a martyr would be forgiven except debt. Whoa, this means that debt is a serious thing not to be taken lightly. Besides, Allah Azza wa Jal mandated Hajj upon those who are capable of doing it. If you have extra money, pay off your debt. If you have extra money that you're not using to pay off your debt, then you're sinful for that. Going for Hajj is not because you don't have sufficient means. You have debts to clear. So definitely do not go for Hajj until you pay off your debt. Someone would say, Sheikh, my debt is 100,000 and it takes only 20,000 to go for Hajj and I have this 20,000. So if I pay it to the bank or to the people who want their money back, it's not going to be enough. Yes, it's not going to be enough. If I want 100,000 from you and you're able to pay it all, I'm angry. If you give me 20,000 and promise to pay the rest soon, I'll be happy. I'll be okay, sort of. But if I see you going for Hajj with my money, that would be something adding more to my anger. Dino says, during wudu, what should be considered as washing out of order? If a person starts to wash the face and water drips down his arms, would he have to start over? Do they have to do or to dry it? Man, there's nothing wrong in that. I don't know where you got this concept. So imagine I'm in a swimming pool and I perform wudu. My feet, my arms, my whole body is wet. Do you mean to tell me that this is not acceptable? No. There's no relation to it. It seems to me that you've misunderstood the order bit. Wudu pillars. You remember we said that they are the order and to be simultaneous. The order means that I do not begin with washing my arms and then washing my face. This is totally unacceptable. The wudu is invalid. This is the order. But if I wash my face and water covers my arms, there's no problem in that, because after I finish my washing my face, I will wash my arms again, regardless whether it is wet or dry. So I hope this answers your question. Haslin says, what is better, praying on time with tayammum or combining salat with wudu? Because to do wudu, patient is unable to walk due extreme pain on the lower back because of an operation. So it's hard to get restroom with Catherine. So may Allah Azza wa Jal uplifts the pain and the agony, and may Allah restore the health to all those who've been operated on and those who are ill. What is best, to pray with tayammum on time or to delay the prayer and pray it with wudu and combining? Both are okay, because a person is in need and he's permitted to combine whenever there arises such a dire and serious need. But if I were to be in their shoes, may Allah protect us all, I would go for praying on time. Do tayammum and pray on time, because once the prayer was due, we ask, is this patient capable of praying? The answer is yes. Why isn't he praying? Because it's difficult for him to perform wudu. If it's difficult for him or impossible for him to perform wudu, what is the alternative? Make tayammum. Therefore, make tayammum and pray. And Allah Azza wa Jal makes it easy for all of us. The second question for Haslin is that I am unable to lift my right to hold left hand to drink water. Most of the time, my mom helps me in drinking, but when she's out, I'm unable to hold the right hand. If a person is in pain, is in great difficulty, if he tries to drink, he spills everything on his body and it's painful. If he tries to do it with the right, if he tries to eat, he trembles and throws everything on his body. Islam tells you, why are you killing yourself? There's no need. Yes, it is. You can eat with your left, because nowhere in Islam it tells us to have all the food on our bodies and clothes and water and liquids, and because it's difficult for us to use the right. Use your left hand without any problem. Lyric says, is it permissible to pray sometimes 2 rak'ah after Asr based on the hadith in Bukhari narrated by Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her? This issue is an issue of dispute. Aisha said that the Prophet used to offer them all the time. Hadith Salama, may Allah be pleased with her, when she said, O Prophet of Allah, you prohibited us to pray at this time, but now you're praying 2 rak'ahs. He didn't say yeah, this is okay. I'm praying it every single day. Rather, he explained that he missed them because of a delegation that came to accept Islam, and he was busy with them until Asr time was due. So, in another narration, Salama said, should we observe it, O Prophet of Allah? Should we do it? And the Prophet said, no, don't do it. But some scholars say that this is a weak hadith. So, why did the Prophet ﷺ continue to do it as per hadith of Aisha? Scholars say that the Prophet, whenever had done something, he used to maintain doing it. But at the same time, whenever the Prophet tells us something and he does not do it himself, so scholars have only for the Prophet ﷺ. Others say that this is okay. It shows that it is permissible. And it seems to me, and Allah knows best, if a person skips the sunnah of dhuhr until Asr time is due for a legitimate reason, like the reason of the Prophet ﷺ, being preoccupied with the delegation who came to accept Islam. In this case, there's no problem in making it up, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Abu Ibrahim says, what is the ruling on fasting al-ayyam al-bid, the white days, every month? If one intends to fast, should I fast the whole 3 days consecutively or 1 or 2 days? The white days, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th of every lunar month, fasting them is a highly recommended sunnah. And the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to do it. However, these 3 days are a package deal. So 13th, 14th, and 15th are connected. If you miss one day, then as if you did not fast any of the other 2 days as white days. So if you're going to fast 13th and 14th, and then the third day you're going to fast it on the 30th of the month, might as well fast 1 day in the beginning, a day on the 10th, and a day on the 20th. It's exactly the same. There's no extra reward. The extra reward is in fasting the full 3 days as a package. So it's okay to fast 3 days of the white days. It's okay to skip them and fast any other random 3 days of the month. Fasting 1 or 2 of them, of the white days, has no significance. Afia says, is reward for praying Qiyamul Layl and Tahajjud are the same? The answer is, generally speaking, yes. But Tahajjud has an extra edge, an extra reward, because you force yourself to wake up from your sleep. While Qiyam al-Layl can be offered after Isha, before sleep or after sleep, it's the same thing, and Allah knows best. Yahya Habib says, my question is how to get to follow the authentic teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, because there are so many fabrications in the world today about the Prophet ﷺ. Well, if you're not a medical professional, doctor, you can't browse the internet and come up with a solution for your illness. There are so many people saying different things. You have to go to a specialist. So when it comes to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, there are so many people claiming to be students of knowledge, scholars, da'is, and in so many cases they have conflicting opinions. So rightly asked, what to do? Well, Yahya, you have to select one sheikh, one imam, one scholar whom you trust and you know that he speaks out of knowledge and he follows the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to the letter, and follow him. Because you're a layman. You can't pick and choose. The second alternative is that you start learning your religion in order to qualify to be a highly decorated student of knowledge, and then you can select from the different scholars the most authentic opinion according to the knowledge that you possess. Isra Hassan says, can a woman meet our beloved Prophet ﷺ in Jannah? This is in Allah's knowledge. We know that, Sheikh, they are in their trillions. There's so many human beings. How can they meet the Prophet ﷺ? Again, do not measure the world of the unseen with your own limited ability of understanding. We only believe in 3 dimensions: height, width, and length. The world of the unseen has more than these 3 dimensions, way more. So this is applicable, this is possible. Ask Allah Azza wa Jal, and hopefully males and females will meet the Prophet ﷺ. Abbas Zamara says, if we are in the state of janaba, meaning major ritual impurity, do we need to offer ghusl twice and separately with the ghusl of Jumu'ah, or can one ghusl suffice? No, one ghusl does the job. You don't have to perform a separate ghusl for uplifting your major ritual impurity, then perform a second ghusl. One would do the job, and this is the most authentic opinion. This is all the time we have. Until we meet you next Thursday, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.